finish talking about the. All right. So, are there any questions? Anything you wanted to explain?
Just pages 384
384 through 428. We'll work on that. I'll see what we can do.
We can skip all the memorization part, that we can do on our own. But
Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do. But there's about 7 objectives. They just pure memorization. Yeah. All right, skeletal system. What are its functions?
support movement.
What are the 3 ones that you think of right away?
Support, protect,
protection, movement.
movement.
Okay, that's pretty easy. Those ones should be not pretty intuitive.
Mineral storage.
But mineral storage, hematopoiesis, fat storage. Those probably aren't ones that you're used to. Okay, what is hematopoiesis?
Hematopoiesis.
Hematopoiesis.
Production of blood.
Production of what in blood? Blood cells. Formation of the foreign elements of blood. Okay. Exactly. Mineral storage. What do we store in bone? Calcium. Phosphates. Calcium and phosphates are the 2 main ions that we're going to talk about. And where are they stored?
Where in the bone are they stored?
Spongy? Yes.
Just throughout the whole thing, isn't it? Just
Compact? Yes. Well, what specifically in the compact and in the spongy?
the cells, osteolytic cells, osteocytes.
Not in the osteocytes. Where are the osteocytes held? In the lacunae. And lacunae are just what?
Reservoirs.
They're just holes in what? In the extracellular matrix. Where is this calcium phosphate stored?
In the extracellular matrix.
In the extracellular matrix. As what? What's the name of the part that holds the calcium and the phosphate?
Hydroxyapatite. Yes.
Hydroxyapatite is the extracellular, is the inorganic portion.
We got to know hydroxyapatite.
Extracellular matrix, yes.
I'll find some note taking
Stored in
room.
that form, and then when these break down, it separates the calcium.
Correct.
phosphate and all that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So when we store it in bone, we build what? Extracellular matrix. So we store calcium in the bone through the formation of extracellular matrix,
Which is collagen and this hydroxy.
which is a combination of the hydroxyapatite and collagen. Exactly. We break it down, to get the calcium out, we break down the extracellular matrix, which releases the calcium and the phosphate. We mainly are concerned with the calcium back into the blood. Okay. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but your mineral homeostasis is a big part of this module. You're going to have to understand this. That's a big part. You're going to have to know mineral homeostasis and then memorize all the bones. That's, for the most part, this test. Okay. We also store fat. When you're young, most all your bones, the inside of your bones is red bone marrow. As you get older, we talked about redistributing fat to the core of the body. We do that one way by not only having the buffalo hump and spare tires and things of that, but we also do it by replacing the red bone marrow with yellow bone marrow, which is fat storage. Okay? So support, protection, movement, that's pretty easy. Understand that. Make sure you understand mineral homeostasis, which we're going to talk about in depth here in a minute. It also creates, or it also produces red bone formed elements, blood formed elements in the red bone marrow. That's called what? Hematopoiesis. It's a fun word to say. And then fat storage, okay? So in the skin, what is the stem cell in skin? In the epidermis? Stratum basal, exactly. What's the stem cell in bone? Osteogenic cells. Okay. So the osteogenic cells is going to produce what? Osteocytes, osteoblasts, osteoclasts. Okay. And each one of those has a very specific role. What's the role of an osteocyte? Exactly, maintain the bone. Okay. Is bone living or dead?
It's living.
It's living. It's a connective tissue, right? We talked about it 2 modules ago. You had loose, dense, cartilage, bone, and liquid, or all the different types of connective tissue. Okay. Bone is a living connective tissue. Okay. So it needs to be maintained. It needs to have blood vessels. It needs to have nutrients. It needs to have all these things to it. And we're going to talk about how it gets there. Okay. So know those 4 different types of bone cells and what they do. Osteoclast breaks down, osteoblast builds. Exactly. And like we said, the inorganic portion of bone in the extracellular matrix is the calcium phosphate together, which makes up, what do we call that part, the inorganic part of the extracellular matrix? Hydroxyapatite. Okay, exactly. Hydroxyapatite. That formula in the middle of 386, calcium 10 PO4 6 OH2 would be something to remember. Just remember, if it has calcium and phosphate in it, you're most likely got the right formula. So we talked about the organic portion, collagen, okay? What type of extracellular matrix is, describe the extracellular matrix in bone? Hard, yeah. It was an easier question than you thought. It wasn't a hard question. Okay, extracellular matrix in bone is hard. Do we need it that way? Yes. Because how are you going to have protection, movement, support if you don't have the hard frame structure? Okay. So but we need to have. Has anyone ever worked with cement? A little bit. What happens if you add too much water to the mix? What if you don't add enough water? Too dry. It's exactly the same thing with bone. Okay. If you have too much of one, organic or inorganic, you're going to have problems. If you have too much of the other, you're going to have problems. If it's too much inorganic, they become brittle or flexible. Inorganic. Think of collagen. It's collagen, put in lips to make them big and full and elastic. Elastic collagen. Okay. So right. So if you have too much inorganic, too much calcium, too much phosphate, they become brittle. And what do we call that? Osteogenesis imperfecta. Osteomalacia is when it's too soft in adults. Okay. And what do we call it in children? Rickets. Okay. You've seen, most people think that a lot of the cowboys, they had, what do they call them? Because they had around the legs, bow-legged. They came from riding horses. That's not actually where a lot of them get the bow-leggedness.
No calcium out there in the field.
A lot of them didn't have the calcium they needed, or the vitamin D to absorb the calcium. Okay, so a lot of them, yes, probably some of them were bow-legged, but most of them in the Old West was bow-legged because of calcium deficiencies. Okay. know the difference between compact and spongy bone. Where do you find calcium, compact bone?
On the outside.
On the outside, okay. And spongy is mainly inside, okay. On long bones, where do you normally find spongy?
On either side of them, on the inside.
ends, on the proximal and distal ends, and in the middle, down the medullary cavity. Okay.
Where?
Medullary cavity in the middle, those long bones,
So it just was on the outside of the inside.
the inside.
Yeah, well,
Spongy is on the inside.
yeah, it's on the inside, but it lines the inside cavity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you have the markers.
The way you described it is just like there's spongy bone all throughout the bone, but like just nothing but spongy bone.
So
Instead of a
you
cavity.
have your compact bone, and in the middle is what we call the medullary cavity. And then you have spongy bone that braces it.
So it doesn't line the medullary cavity.
It's a lot thinner there than it is out here, because you need to have more space for your
Okay.
bone marrow.
Okay.
Okay. But it is there, just not as thick. Okay. And out here it's going to be much thicker because you need to have that tight, hard support. Okay. What is the functional unit of a bone? Of a compact bone?
Is it the medullary cavity? Or the...
I should say, I guess, the basic structural unit. That's the osteon.
Oh.
It's not really a functional. The functional unit would be the osteocyte. Okay. Basic structural unit is an osteon, okay, in compact bone. And how do they run? Do they run just from here to here, here to here, here to here? They go around this way? Or do they go the entire length?
They go the entire length.
Of the bone. They're the entire length of the bone.
The osteon?
But they're
The osteon.
rings. I mean,
They
they're
are
such
rings, they're circles, but they run the entire length of the bone, okay? So I know we do a nice little cut of a section here, we cut off this section, so so we see this much of the osteon, but it actually runs the entire length of the bone, okay?
Are we gonna have to know it as the Haversian system or whatever? it's called?
The Haversian system is actually not an osteon,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
The Haversian system is what? What's another name for Haversian? To find the Haversian, you have to look at an osteon cross section. Okay. The Haversian is the very center canal that has your blood vessels in it. Okay. So the Haversian system is that canal that runs the length of the bone. Does that make sense? So this is
the
going to
canal
run,
down the center.
goes right down the center. Now, if you were to be able to look in the middle of it,
So what's the osteon, just the whole thing?
yes,
How come in the notes it says that it's another name for it?
it is the osteon, but what you want to think of as a Haversian is this center canal.
It says down on the bottom, central canal, like Haversian system canal.
Yeah, the Haversian canal. They don't call it a Haversian system anymore. The system of
So the
How
Haversian
veins and
system would be
arteries?
the whole thing, they're referring to the whole thing, but the Haversian canal is just the.
yeah,
Oh,
because what does the blood vessels do? They feed everything. Okay, and how many of these Haversian canals do you have in bone?
a lot.
Every single osteon has one. Okay, so that's why they're saying it's the Haversian system. It's the way that the system gets fed. Okay,